So our first speaker is Gabe Finger, and he's going to be talking to us about an analysis of the discovery of an unknown population of Desmognathine salamanders following the collapse of the Mill Pond Dam. Okay, this is another exciting find for Long Island, so I'm going to leave it to Gabe. Okay, advances down, it goes backwards. Okay, and then this is the pointer. Okay.
Hello, everyone. I'm Gabe Finger. For those of you who aren't familiar, this was the Mill Pond. The Mill Pond is a very special place for a lot of local people. It's bordered on the far side by Avalon Preserve and also by Stony Brook Village. And it was a place where a lot of people went to feed the ducks, to walk around, to just hang out. But then, of course, over the summer, we had a huge storm. With a lot of rain, and now the Mill Pond looks like this. All of the water that was being held back by the dam on Harbor Road washed out because the dam collapsed, and a lot of debris, a lot of trash washed into the Sound, into Stony Brook Harbor, into some of the surrounding creeks. And while one person was in one of the surrounding creeks picking up trash, she noticed something that she'd never seen before. She found this salamander on the sandy embankment of the stream. Presumably it was washed out by the surge of water. And she sent it to one of my fellow board members on Four Harbors Audubon Society. And she knew that I was into reptiles and amphibians, so she showed me this picture, and I identified it as a Northern Dusky Salamander. However, upon looking at some range maps, I realized that there are no Northern Dusky Salamanders on Long Island, at least not known to currently exist. And in fact, there are no species even in the genus Desmognathus, which is the Dusky Salamander genus, on Long Island. We have 8 species of salamanders on Long Island. We have the marbled, the blue-spotted, the spotted, the eastern tiger salamander, the red-spotted newt, the northern redback four-toed, and northern two-lined. But as you can see in this range map of the Northern Dusky Salamander in New York State, there are no Northern Dusky Salamanders on Long Island. And this is from the New York Herp Atlas, if any of you are familiar with that project. So a few days later, John Turner, if you guys know him, myself and a couple of others returned to this creek to see if we could find any other individuals. And I was able to find a second individual, a different one. And after that, John Turner returned to this creek and to a nearby creek a couple other times, and he found 2 more. So as of now, we know of 4 different individuals living in these 2 creeks. So while we don't know the exact species yet, we do know that these salamanders belong to the genus Desmognathus. This is a genus of Plethodontidae salamanders in the family Plethodontidae. Those are the lungless salamanders. So they perform cutaneous respiration. They rely on their surroundings, getting oxygen from the air and from dissolved oxygen in the water. And they tend to be semi to highly aquatic, with the Northern Dusky Salamanders being towards the highly aquatic end of the spectrum. And in the streams and seepages that they inhabit, they persist off of a diet of aquatic invertebrates and also other amphibian larvae. These larvae could be those of other Desmognathus species. They could also be their own species, which they will eat. And what's very important is that the creeks and seepages that they inhabit must be highly oxygenated and cool. And this is actually how I found that second individual, is because it was in one of the faster flowing parts of the streams where the water is more oxygenated. And there's very typical dusky salamander habitat. So for a long time, this genus has been studied with regard to their phylogeny because they're such a speciose genus, and really Plethodontidae as a whole is a very diverse family. It's been suggested that a lot of the speciation has happened via allopatry and parapatry, and a lot of the speciation has been influenced by niche conservatism rather than niche differentiation, kind of counterintuitively. Because if you take, a mountain range that forms in the middle of a population, for example, if the salamanders have to remain in their climatic niche, which is, usually intermediate elevations, then they can't traverse the valley that forms to get to a disjunct population of their same species, and this can cause speciation. The other thing that's greatly influenced the natural history of these salamanders is competition in and amongst different Desmognathus species. So presumably the larger species have predated upon and competed with the smaller species, pushing the smaller ones to be more terrestrial. So since there hasn't been any genetic analysis done on these salamanders, we have two hypotheses as to what they might be. The first one is that it could potentially be a species new to science. The Desmognathus is considered to be the second most species-rich genus of plethodontid salamanders and the most radiative genus. They're also very cryptically diverse. So what this means is that there's very little phenotypic differentiation between species, and this basically allows new species to be hidden right under our noses in our backyards, and species that we think are one species but are actually multiple species. And the other thing is that, as I mentioned earlier, these salamanders are typically associated with intermediate elevations, in the mountains. If you take the Appalachian Mountains, for example, they have, like a Desmognathus species that are microendemic to each mountaintop in the range. And of course, Long Island is not in the mountains. We are essentially at sea level, and it's been suggested that slight climatic differences between populations can be enough to cause reproductive isolation. And so since these salamanders live at such an unusual elevation for their genus, it could point to it being potentially a new species. Last piece of evidence is that there is a relatively recent period of rapid speciation in the sister genus Plethodon, and Kozak et al. Found that basically based on the rate of speciation that occurred during this time and the amount of time that it lasted, there has to be more species of plethodontid salamanders than we know to currently exist. The second hypothesis, and this is possibly more likely, is that it is a range extension of Desmognathus fuscus, or the Northern Dusky Salamander. This is what we originally identified it to be. Some evidence to suggest this is that the period of rapid speciation that I mentioned earlier happened about 5 million years ago, but the last glaciation on Long Island happened about 11,000 years ago. And then, of course, primary succession had to occur, and then salamanders had to colonize the island. So that sort of begs the question as to whether this would leave enough time for speciation to occur in these salamanders. Also, there are some field marks of the salamanders that we found that are consistent with the Northern Dusky Salamander. But of course, there is very little phenotypic differentiation between members of this genus. But we did notice that the hind legs are more robust than the forelegs. The tail is keeled towards the end and rounded at the base. And the toes are uncornified. And if you look at figure 9 here, you can see a side-by-side comparison of one of the salamanders that we found in the creek and a Northern Dusky Salamander. So whether the salamanders represent a new species or a range extension of an already existing species, This could have significant implications for the mill pond because there has been so much pressure from the public to restore this pond, and the pond is obviously not the natural state of the system. And rebuilding it could severely limit the available habitat for these salamanders because they need fast-flowing water that is highly oxygenated. And of course, the dissolved oxygen of lotic systems, like the streams that we found, are a lot higher than the dissolved oxygen of lentic systems like pond. So this could present a physiological challenge to these salamander survival in this area of the stream. And also, the pond could foster an environment for predators such as, predatory fish like bass that would prey on these salamanders that don't necessarily live in the streams that these salamanders typically live in. So that could present a further challenge to this population of salamanders, increasing their range and increasing their numbers. Because as of now, for all we know, there's only 4 of them. I will leave you with this. We do have future plans to do genetic analysis with the Museum of Natural History and Cold Spring Harbor. All of this kind of happened in the early fall and late winter, and so shortly after that, it got cold. The salamanders kind of went into hibernation. So hopefully this season, and if not this season, definitely in the near future, we will be doing genetic analysis to confirm the identity of these salamanders. These are the sources. Thank you for your time, and I'm now open for any questions. Yes.
Great presentation.
So,
Thanks.
Jeremy, hang on. So for questions, if you'll come to one of these mics so that we can record. Mine.
Hi, Gabe.
Hi.
Again, great talk. One of the, I was learned about this as the situation was sort of early in its evolution. One of the things I'm wondering is, so my understanding is that the populations are all almost entirely on private property.
Yes, that's been a problem.
Yeah, and that property is, I don't really know how to describe it. It's sort of like a foundation property. Have you had any success contacting them? Because one of the hurdles that I've seen with this is that to get any sort of genetic analysis from an institution, they're going to need permission. And I reached out to speak to the owner, or not the owner, but the person that's in charge, and they seem very averse to giving that permission. So have you explored how you're going, any alternatives or ways to get that permission so that the institutions like AMNH, the American Museum, or Smithsonian can do the analysis the way they need to, where it's all accounted for?
Yeah, so this is a good point you bring up. So as I mentioned, there's 2 streams. I mean, there might even be the same stream, but in 2 different places, in the same system. One of them is on, I believe it's Warren Melville Historical Society or Heritage. Heritage land. And we've reached out to them, and yeah, they were pretty averse to giving us permission for some reason. The other one is on private property that's, just a person. And we have tried to reach out to him. We've had trouble, we've gone and knocked on his door a couple of times. We've had trouble getting in contact with him. But yeah, we think that the stream on his property is probably the better avenue to getting that permission.
If I could just add that, we have reached out. In fact, I reached out as recently as last night in an email to that private property owner. Now that the warmer weather's coming and we can get back on the field, just hopefully see this documented to gain permission to be able to access the property. But
yeah,
we'll look for them, the tissue work that I didn't want. you and your colleagues want to do. I do understand one thing, and I perhaps I missed it, but to make it clear to viewers here that this species, if it is, fuscus, it is found on Long Island historically. Roy Latham, who you'll be hearing about his work later on, did document the species in Calverton, as well as folks at the American Museum of Natural History documented, numerous Dodge specimens from northern Queens and I think maybe northwestern Nassau County.
Hmm.
So it was thought that were known to be here at one time, but as Dave pointed out, just hiding in plain sight, the only extant population is the one that.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I believe those Museum of Natural History records are from 1938.
Yeah.
So, hasn't been seen in nearly 100 years.
We reached out to one of the Heritage Organization as well, and we were involved about the being able to gain access to their property.
Any other questions?
Okay. I hope I'm not the only one with this question. You're finding the salamanders now, and they were here when the pond was here. Why would having a pond be refilled?
That's a great question. So yeah, you're right. They were here when the pond was filled, but we don't know how they were doing. I mean, like I said, there's only been 4 of them found, which is obviously not a stable population. And having the pond be returned to a allotic free-flowing system would allow more habitat for these salamanders, because the stream that they found in flows directly into that. And so that would, allow more habitat with higher dissolved oxygen and fewer predators that would allow these salamanders to move into that and even past that, into however long this flowing system goes. Yeah. Any others? Is that it?
That's it, Gabe.
All right.